The Black Hawk's rotors turned the Afghan dust into a swirling brown cloud as staff. Sergeant Elena Vasquez gripped her duffel bag and prepared to jump down onto the landing zone. The familiar weight of her custom M24 rifle case pressed against her back, a constant companion even during what was supposed to be a peaceful family visit. Through the helicopter's open door, she could see Firebase Echo sprawled across the rocky plateau like a concrete and sandbag fortress, its walls scarred by countless mortar attacks and small arms fire. 30 seconds. The crew chief shouted over the engine noise. Elena's stomach tightened with anticipation. It had been 8 months since she'd seen Marcus. 8 months of wondering if her little brother was staying safe, eating enough, keeping his head down. The last time they'd spoken via satellite phone, his voice had sounded different, older, harder. War had a way of aging people in dog years, and she worried what she might find when she looked into his eyes. The helicopter touched down with a bone-jarring thud, and Elena leaped out, her boots hitting the packed earth as she ducked under the rotor wash. The familiar smell of diesel fuel, cordite, and dust filled her nostrils, the perfume of every forward operating base she'd ever visited. But before she could fully orient herself, a voice cut through the mechanical thunder. "Hermana!" Elena spun around to see a figure sprinting toward her from the direction of the main compound. For a split second, she didn't recognize him. The Marcus running toward her was broader in the shoulders, his face lean and weathered by months of desert sun. Gone was the soft-featured college kid who'd enlisted against their mother's wishes. In his place was a man, a soldier, with the confident stride of someone who'd learned to navigate a war zone. "Marcus!" She dropped her duffel and caught him in a fierce embrace as the helicopter lifted off behind them, its departure leaving them in a pocket of relative quiet. He felt solid in her arms, real, alive. The knot of worry she'd carried for months began to loosen. "Look at you," she said, holding him at arm's length. "Mama wouldn't recognize you." Marcus grinned, but Elena noticed how his eyes automatically tracked the helicopter's departure, scanning the perimeter even during their reunion. "Army food's been good to me." "Well, that and hauling wounded soldiers around all day." He gestured to the red cross on his sleeve. "Combat medic, remember?" "How could I forget? You only mentioned it in every letter." Elena shouldered her gear and followed him toward the main gate. "Though I have to say, the photos didn't do justice to your new muscles." "Yeah, well, carrying a full aid station on your back will do that." Marcus waved to the guards at the checkpoint, who nodded respectfully when they saw Elena's rank insignia and sniper qualification badge. "Wait until you meet my squad." They'd been talking about nothing else since I told them my sister was coming. As they walked through the firebase, Elena took in the controlled chaos of military life. Soldiers moved with purpose between buildings, some heading to chow, others returning from patrol with the 1,000-yard stare of men who'd seen too much. The base was larger than she'd expected, maybe 300 personnel with a mix of prefab buildings, reinforced bunkers, and the inevitable maze of HESCO barriers that defined every American outpost in Afghanistan. "So this is home," she said, noting the blast walls covered in graffiti and the sandbag positions that offered overlapping fields of fire. "Home sweet home." Marcus guided her past a group of soldiers playing cards in the shade of an armored vehicle. "It's not much, but it beats sleeping in a fighting hole. Plus, we've got hot showers twice a week and the best MRE selection this side of Kandahar." Elena laughed despite herself. "Your standards have definitely dropped since college." They passed the motor pool, where mechanics worked on a Humvee with its hood up and tools scattered around like surgical instruments. The sound of generators hummed constantly in the background, providing power to the communications equipment and medical facilities that kept the base functioning. Elena noticed how Marcus unconsciously adjusted his path to stay near cover, never walking in straight lines across open areas. Good habits that would keep him alive. "There's the man of the hour," a voice called out from ahead. Elena looked up to see a group of soldiers emerging from what looked like the mess hall, all of them focused on Marcus with obvious affection. These had to be his squad mates, the men he'd written about in his letters, the ones who'd become his second family in this harsh place. "Guys, this is Elena," Marcus said, his voice carrying a note of pride that made her chest tight. "Elena, meet the finest collection of misfits and degenerates the army has to offer." The introductions came in a blur of names and handshakes. Sergeant First Class Rodriguez, the squad leader with intelligent eyes and premature gray at his temples. Specialist Chun, barely old enough to shave, but already sporting a combat medical badge. Private Williams, a kid from Alabama who looked at Elena like she'd stepped down from Mount Olympus. "Ma'am, is it true you made a 1,200-meter shot in Fallujah?" Williams asked, his voice filled with awe. Elena felt her cheeks warm. "It was 11:50, and I had a good spotter." "Don't let her fool you," Marcus interjected. "She's being modest. Tell them about the sandstorm." "There's not much to tell," Elena said, deflecting with a smile. "Right place, right time, good equipment." But Rodriguez wasn't buying it. "Ma'am, with respect, I've been in this man's army for 12 years, and I've never met anyone who could make that shot in those conditions. Your brothers told us the story about 6 times, and it gets better each telling." The group laughed, and Elena felt herself relaxing into the easy camaraderie that existed between soldiers who'd shared danger together. These men clearly cared about Marcus, and more importantly, they respected him. She could see it in the way they included him in their jokes, the way Rodriguez's eyes softened when he looked at her brother. "Speaking of stories," Chun said, "Marcus told us you're thinking about requesting a transfer to our unit after your leave." Elena glanced at her brother, surprised. "Did he now?" Marcus had the grace to look embarrassed. "I might have mentioned it, hypothetically." "Well, hypothetically," Rodriguez said, "we could use someone with your skills. This sector's been heating up lately, and having a real sniper would make everyone sleep better at night." The comment hung in the air for a moment, and Elena noticed the subtle shift in the group's demeanor. The easy laughter faded slightly, replaced by something more serious. She'd seen that look before, the expression of soldiers who were carrying more stress than they wanted to admit. "How hot is hot?" she asked. Rodriguez exchanged glances with the others before answering. "Increased IED activity on the main supply route. More probing attacks on our patrols. Intelligence suggests there's a new cell operating in the area, better organized than what we've been dealing with." Elena felt her protective instincts flare. "And you're still running regular patrols?" "It's what we do," Marcus said quietly. "Can't let them think they've got us pinned down." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the base commander, Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Mitchell, a compact woman with steel-gray hair and the bearing of someone who'd earned her rank through competence rather than politics. "Staff Sergeant Vasquez," Mitchell said, extending her hand. "Welcome to Firebase Eco. Your brothers told us a lot about you." "Thank you, ma'am. It's good to finally see where Marcus has been living. I hope you'll find our hospitality adequate. We don't get many visitors out here, especially ones with your reputation." Mitchell's smile was genuine, but Elena caught the calculating look in her eyes. "I understand you're on leave, but if you'd like a tour of our operations, I'd be happy to arrange it." "I'd appreciate that, Mom." As the group began to disperse, Marcus fell into step beside Elena, guiding her toward the guest quarters. The sun was beginning to set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that reminded her of the sunsets back home in New Mexico. "They seem like good people," Elena said. "The best," Marcus agreed. Rodriguez has kept us all alive more times than I can count. And Chun, that kid's got hands like a surgeon. Saved 3 lives last month alone." They walked in comfortable silence for a moment before Elena spoke again. "Marcus, about what Rodriguez said, how worried should I be?" Her brother stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression serious. "Elena, I'm not going to lie to you. Things have been tense lately. But we're careful, we're well-trained, and we look out for each other. That's all any of us can do." Elena studied his face, seeing the man he'd become overlaid with memories of the boy who used to climb into her bed during thunderstorms. "Promise me you'll keep your head down." "I promise," he said, then grinned. "Besides, now I've got my big sister here to watch my back." As they reached the guest quarters, a small prefab building with reinforced walls and a view of the perimeter, Elena felt a strange mixture of pride and unease. Marcus was clearly thriving in his role as a medic, respected by his peers and confident in his abilities. But the undercurrent of tension she'd sensed in his squad mates suggested that Firebase Echo was sitting on a powder keg. That night, as she lay on the narrow cot, listening to the sounds of the base settling into its nighttime routine, Elena found herself thinking about Rodriguez's comment about increased enemy activity. Her sniper rifle lay in its case beside her bed, cleaned and ready despite this being a social visit. Old habits died hard, and something in the back of her mind whispered that she might need those habits before her leave was over. Outside her window, she could hear the soft murmur of radio chatter from the communications bunker and the distant sound of a patrol returning through the main gate. Firebase Echo felt secure, well-defended, professional. But Elena had learned long ago that in war, security was always an illusion. The only question was how long the illusion would last. Asterisk. The first mortar round hit at exactly 0347 hours. The explosion tearing Elena from a dream about home-cooked meals and her mother's garden. The blast wave shattered the window above her cot, showering her with glass as the prefab building shuddered on its foundation. Training kicked in before conscious thought. She rolled off the narrow mattress and onto the floor, her hand already reaching for the rifle case beside her bed. The second explosion came 3 seconds later. Closer this time, and Elena felt the concussion in her chest like a physical blow. Emergency lighting flickered on throughout the base as the main power grid went down, casting everything in an eerie red glow. Through the broken window, she could hear the distinctive whistle of incoming mortar mixed with the sharp crack of small arms fire. "Contact? Contact. We are under attack." The voice over the base's PS system was strained but professional. "All personnel to defensive positions. This is not a drill." Elena was already moving, muscle memory from dozens of similar situations taking over. She yanked on her boots and body armor, grabbed her rifle case and ammunition, and sprinted toward the door. As she stepped outside, the third mortar round impacted near the motor pool, sending a fireball into the night sky and illuminating the chaos that had erupted across. Firebase Echo. Soldiers were running in all directions, some heading for predetermined defensive positions, others helping wounded comrades toward the medical bunker. The acrid smell of cordite and burning diesel filled the air, and Elena could taste the metallic tang of adrenaline on her tongue. "Elena!" Marcus's voice cut through the noise, and she turned to see him sprinting toward her from the direction of the medical facility, his aid bag bouncing against his hip. His face was streaked with dust and blood, not his own, she hoped, and his eyes held the focused intensity of a medic in crisis mode. "Are you hit?" He shouted over the continuing explosions. "Negative." "What's the situation?" "They hit the com tower first. We're cut off from higher headquarters. At least 6 mortar positions in the hills, plus small arms fire from multiple directions." Marcus grabbed her arm, pulling her toward a concrete blast barrier as another explosion rocked the base. Rodriguez is trying to coordinate the defense from the command bunker, but we've got wounded everywhere. Elena peered around the barrier and felt her blood turn to ice. Muzzle flashes were winking from at least 8 different positions in the surrounding hills, and she could see movement in the wire. Insurgents were already inside the perimeter. This wasn't a probing attack or a harassment operation. This was a full-scale assault designed to overrun the base. "How many are we facing?" she asked, quickly assembling her rifle with practiced efficiency. "Unknown. Could be 40, could be 60. They knew exactly where to hit us. Took out communications first, then the generator for the main defensive systems." Marcus's voice was tight with controlled fear. "Elena, they've been watching us. This is too coordinated to be random." A burst of automatic weapons fire erupted from their left, and Elena saw Specialist Chun diving for cover behind a HESCO barrier, his rifle returning fire toward the eastern perimeter. The kid was moving well, using proper fire and movement techniques, but she could see he was pinned down by at least 2 enemy positions. "Where's your squad?" Elena asked. "Scattered. Williams is in the north tower. Chun's over there getting chewed up, and Rodriguez is in the command bunker trying to call for backup on the backup radio." Marcus checked his watch. "QRF from Kandahar is at least 40 minutes out, assuming they even got our distress call." Elena did the math in her head. 40 minutes was a lifetime in a firefight like this. With the enemy already inside the wire and more pouring through gaps in the perimeter, Firebase Echo would be overrun long before help arrived. Unless someone could even the odds. She looked toward the damaged watchtower that dominated the center of the base. It was partially collapsed from a direct mortar hit, but the upper platform was still intact. From there, she'd have a commanding view of the entire battlefield and clear lines of sight to the enemy positions in the hills. "Marcus, I need you to get to Rodriguez and tell him I'm taking overwatch from the tower." "Elena, no?" "That thing could collapse at any second, and you'll be completely exposed up there." Another explosion, this one close enough to spray them with debris. Elena could hear the distinctive sound of an RPG detonating somewhere near the mess hall, followed by screams for a medic. The base's return fire was becoming more sporadic as defenders were killed or forced to take cover. "Look around, little brother. We're getting slaughtered down here." Elena shouldered her rifle and checked her ammunition load. 120 rounds of match-grade .308. Enough for a sustained engagement if she made every shot count. Those snipers in the hills are picking off anyone who tries to mount an effective defense. Someone needs to take them out, and I'm the only one here qualified to do it. Marcus grabbed her arm as she started to move. "Elena, please. I just got you back." She turned to face him, seeing the scared little boy she remembered overlaid with the competent medic he'd become. "And you're going to keep me, I promise. But right now, I'm the only chance this base has." Before he could protest further, she was moving, sprinting across the open ground toward the base of the watchtower. Bullets whined past her head, kicking up spurts of dust at her feet, but she kept running. Behind her, she could hear Marcus shouting into his radio, coordinating with Rodriguez to provide covering fire for her ascent. The tower's lower level was a maze of twisted metal and concrete debris from the mortar strike. Elena picked her way through carefully, testing each handhold before committing her weight. The structure groaned ominously as she climbed, but it held. Halfway up, she paused to catch her breath and assess the situation below. It was worse than she'd thought. The eastern perimeter had been completely breached, and she could see insurgents moving through the base in small groups, using the buildings for cover as they advanced toward the command bunker. Several American bodies lay motionless in the open areas, and she could see muzzle flashes from at least 3 different buildings where defenders had been forced to take shelter. "Elena, this is Rodriguez. The voice crackled in her earpiece. Marcus must have given her his radio. I count 6 sniper positions in the hills, designated Alpha through Foxtrot. They're systematically engaging anyone who tries to establish a defensive line. Copy that. I'm almost in position. Elena resumed her climb, her muscles burning from the effort. The tower swayed slightly in the wind, and she could hear metal creaking under the stress. But when she finally reached the observation platform, she understood why the enemy had tried so hard to destroy it. From here, she had a god's eye view of the entire battlefield. The insurgent positions were clearly visible, now muzzle flashes winking from rocky outcroppings and abandoned buildings in the hills surrounding the base. She could see their fields of fire, their escape routes, their blind spots. More importantly, she could see the pattern of their attack. This wasn't random violence. It was a carefully orchestrated operation designed to systematically destroy Firebase, Echo's ability to defend itself. Elena set up her rifle on the platform's concrete ledge, adjusting the bipod legs for maximum stability. The wind was gusting from the northwest at approximately 8 miles per hour. She'd need to compensate for that. Range to the nearest target was roughly 400 meters, well within her effective range even in these conditions. Through her scope, she could see an insurgent sniper in a rocky outcropping designated Alpha. He was methodically engaging targets in the base's northern sector, his shots precise and deadly. As she watched, his bullet struck a soldier who'd been trying to reach a wounded comrade, dropping him instantly. Elena controlled her breathing, feeling her heart rate slow as she entered the zone that every sniper knew, that place where time seemed to stretch and the world narrowed to the space between crosshairs and target. She could hear Marcus's voice on the radio, coordinating medical evacuation for the wounded, and the sound gave her strength. The insurgent sniper shifted position slightly, presenting a clear shot. Elena exhaled slowly, took up the slack in her trigger, and fired. The .308 round covered the 400 meters in less than half a second, striking the enemy sniper center mass and dropping him from his position. 1 down. Asterisk. Good hit, Elena. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the radio. Target Alpha is down. Shifting to Bravo. Elena was already acquiring her next target, a machine gunner who'd been raking the base's western defenses with devastating effect. The range was longer, nearly 600 meters, but the target was stationary and clearly silhouetted against the rocky hillside. She adjusted for distance and wind, settled her breathing, and squeezed the trigger again. The machine gun fell silent. Below her, she could hear the base's defenders beginning to rally. With the enemy snipers being systematically eliminated, American soldiers were able to move more freely, establishing proper defensive positions and coordinating their fire. But Elena knew the battle was far from over. The insurgents still had superior numbers, and their assault teams were already inside the wire. As she acquired her third target, Elena caught a glimpse of movement in her peripheral vision. A group of insurgents was advancing on the tower itself, apparently realizing that the American sniper needed to be eliminated. She had maybe 2 minutes before they reached her position. Time to work faster. Asterisk. Elena's third shot echoed across the battlefield as another enemy sniper tumbled from his rocky perch. But she barely had time to savor the kill. Through her peripheral vision, she could see muzzle flashes from the base of the tower. The insurgents had reached her position and were firing upward, their bullets sparking off the concrete platform and whining past her head like angry hornets. Elena, you've got company. Marcus's voice crackled through her earpiece, tight with fear. At least 6 tangos at the base of your tower, and more moving in from the east. She rolled away from her firing position as a burst of automatic fire chewed chunks from the concrete where she'd been lying. The tower swayed sickeningly under the impact, and she could hear the groan of stressed metal somewhere below. The whole structure was on the verge of collapse. But she couldn't abandon her position, not when the base's defenders were finally starting to turn the tide. "Rodriguez, I need immediate suppression on the tower base," she called into her radio while low-crawling to the platform's opposite side. "I can't engage the hill positions with tangos climbing up my ass." "Working on it." Chun and Williams are moving to support. Elena peered over the platform's edge and saw Specialist Chun sprinting across open ground toward the tower, his rifle chattering as he laid down covering fire. The kid was moving like a veteran, using every piece of cover available, but he was badly outnumbered. Behind him, she could see Private Williams emerging from the north bunker, a saw machine gun cradled in his arms. The insurgents at the tower base were focused upward, trying to eliminate the sniper who'd been decimating their overwatch positions. Elena could hear them shouting to each other in Pashto, their voices growing closer as they climbed the damaged structure. She estimated maybe 90 seconds before they reached her level. She slithered back to her rifle and quickly acquired target. Delta, an enemy sniper who'd been engaging the command bunker with devastating effect. The range was over 700 meters, and she was firing from an unstable platform while under direct fire. But Rodriguez was right about one thing. The base's survival depended on eliminating those overwatch positions. Elena controlled her breathing, found her natural respiratory pause, and squeezed the trigger. The bullet flew true, and the distant muzzle flash went dark. 4 down, 2 to go. "Outstanding shot." Rodriguez's voice carried a note of amazement. "Delta is neutralized. Chun's almost to your position." The sound of boots on metal rungs told Elena that her time was running out. The insurgents were maybe 30 feet below and climbing fast. She shifted position again, this time to the platform's southern edge, and spotted target, Echo, a sniper who'd been systematically picking off medics and wounded soldiers. The bastard was using a Dragunov rifle with a distinctive muzzle brake, and Elena could see him tracking another target through his scope. The range was nearly 800 meters, complicated by swirling dust, kicked up by the explosions and a crosswind that had shifted direction. Elena made rapid calculations and her head windage left 2 clicks. Elevation up 3 and settled behind her rifle. Just as the first insurgent's head appeared over the platform's edge, she had maybe 5 seconds before they opened fire. Elena found her target, made a final adjustment for the wind, and fired. Through her scope, she saw the enemy sniper jerk backward and disappear from view. But before she could confirm the kill, automatic weapons fire erupted from behind her. "Get down." Chen's voice, much closer now. Elena rolled hard to her left as bullets sparked off the concrete where she'd been lying. Chen had reached the tower and was engaging the insurgents on the platform below, his M4 rifle barking in controlled bursts. She could hear Williams's saw opening up from ground level, the heavy machine gun's distinctive sound cutting through the chaos like a buzzsaw. "Elena, you've got one more sniper position target, Foxtrot. Bearing 270, range approximately 900 meters. Rodriguez's voice was urgent. "He's got overwatch on our main defensive line. If you can take him out, we can push these bastards back through the wire." 900 meters. In perfect conditions, it would be a challenging shot. In the middle of a firefight, from a damaged tower, with insurgents trying to kill her, it was nearly impossible. But Elena had made impossible shots before. She crawled to the western edge of the platform, staying low as Shen continued his firefight with the insurgents below. Through her scope, she could see target Foxtrot, a sniper positioned in what looked like an abandoned building on a distant ridgeline. He was well concealed, only the occasional muzzle flash giving away his position dot as she watched. His bullet struck an American soldier who'd been trying to establish a machine gun position near the motor pool. The defender crumpled, and Elena felt a cold fury settle over her. This bastard had been killing her people all night. picking them off one by one with clinical precision. Time to return the favor. Elena studied the wind, indicators, dust patterns, the movement of debris, the way smoke drifted from the burning vehicles. The wind had shifted again, now coming from the southwest at maybe 10 miles per hour. She'd need to compensate significantly for both windage and the extreme range. "Chun, how much time do I have?" she called out. "Maybe 30 seconds before they flank my position." The young medic's voice was strained but steady. "Williams is keeping most of them pinned, but there's too many." Elena made her calculations and settled behind her rifle. Through the scope, she could see the enemy sniper adjusting his position, probably preparing for another shot. The range was at the very limit of her rifle's effective capability, and she'd only get one chance before the insurgents overran her position. She controlled her breathing, found her natural respiratory pause, and began her trigger squeeze. Halfway through the pull, the tower shuddered as an RPG detonated somewhere below, throwing off her aim. She released the trigger and started over. "Elena, whatever you're going to do it now." Chen's voice was desperate. Through her scope, she could see the enemy sniper settling behind his rifle, his crosshairs probably fixed on another American defender. Elena made a final wind adjustment, found her breathing rhythm, and squeezed the trigger with smooth, steady pressure. The bullet seemed to hang in the air forever, crossing the 900 meters of broken ground in just over a second. Elena watched through her scope as it struck the enemy sniper high in the chest, spinning him around and dropping him from view. "Target Foxtrot is down." Rodriguez's voice carried a note of triumph. "All Overwatch positions neutralized. All units, advance and push these bastards back through the wire." The effect was immediate and dramatic. With their sniper support eliminated, the insurgents inside the base found themselves caught in a crossfire as American defenders emerged from cover and began coordinating their fire. Elena could see soldiers moving with purpose now, no longer pinned down by accurate fire from the hills. "Elena, we need to get you down from there." Marcus's voice cut through the radio chatter. "That tower's not going to hold much longer." He was right. Elena could feel the structure swaying more pronounced now, and the sound of grinding metal was getting louder. But as she prepared to descend, movement in the distant hills caught her eye. Through her scope, she could see a figure in distinctive red headwear, directing the insurgent retreat probably. The enemy commander. The range was impossible, well, over 1,000 meters, but Elena had one round left in her, magazine and a clear line of sight. If she could eliminate the enemy leader, it might turn the retreat into a complete rout. She chambered her last round, made rapid calculations for the extreme range, and settled behind her rifle one final time. The wind was gusting unpredictably now, and the target was moving. But Elena had spent years perfecting shots that others considered impossible. Asterisk. She found her breathing rhythm, tracked the target's movement, and squeezed the trigger. Through her scope, she watched a distant figure stumble and fall. Even at that range, she could see the confusion spreading through the enemy ranks as their commander went down. "Holy shit!" Chun's voice was filled with awe. "Did you just make a 1,000-meter shot?" Elena didn't answer. She was already moving, slinging her rifle and preparing to descend the damaged tower. Below her, the sounds of battle were changing fewer incoming rounds. More American voices coordinating the pursuit of fleeing insurgents. The tide had turned. The first rays of sunlight painted the Afghan mountains in shades of gold and crimson as Elena carefully descended the damaged watchtower, her legs shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion. Each step down the twisted metal framework felt precarious, the structure groaning ominously under her weight. Behind her, the platform where she'd spent the last hour dealing death to enemy snipers was scarred with bullet holes and shrapnel gouges. a testament to how close she'd come to joining the casualties. Easy does it. Amana, Marcus called from below, his voice hoarse from shouting medical commands throughout the night. That last support beam looks ready to give way. Elena could see him waiting at the base of the tower, his medical bag slung across his shoulder and his uniform soaked with blood from treating the wounded. Dark circles ringed his eyes, but he was standing steady, alert, alive. That was all that mattered. She dropped a final 8 feet to the ground, her boots hitting the concrete with a solid thud that sent vibrations through her exhausted muscles. Marcus immediately pulled her into a fierce embrace, and she could feel him trembling slightly, whether from relief, adrenaline, or delayed shock. She couldn't tell. Jesus Christ. Elena, when I saw those insurgents climbing up after you, his voice broke slightly. I thought I was going to lose you. Not today, little brother. Elena held him tight, breathing in the familiar scent of his aftershave, mixed with cordite and dust. Not today. Around them, Firebase Echo was slowly coming back to life. Soldiers moved through the compound with purpose, some pursuing the fleeing insurgents beyond the wire, others beginning the grim task of casualty collection and damage assessment. The acrid smell of burning diesel still hung in the air from the destroyed vehicles, but the sound of incoming fire had been replaced by the steady thrum of helicopters approaching from the south. Staff Sergeant Vasquez. Lieutenant Colonel. Mitchell's voice cut through the morning air as she approached. Her uniform torn and dusty, but her bearing still commanding. I need to speak with you. Elena released Marcus and came to attention, suddenly aware that she was covered in concrete dust and cordite residue, her hair escaping from its regulation bun. Ma'am, at ease. Mitchell's expression was unreadable as she studied Elena's face. Sergeant First Class Rodriguez has given me his preliminary after-action report. According to his count, you eliminated 7 enemy snipers and 1 command element from that tower. Is that accurate? I believe so, ma'am. I didn't have time for detailed battle damage assessment. Mitchell nodded slowly. Those 7 snipers had our entire defensive perimeter pinned down. Without your intervention, Firebase Echo would have been overrun within the hour. She paused, her voice softening slightly. You saved this base, Staff Sergeant. You saved every life here. Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. I was just doing my job, ma'am. No, Mitchell said firmly. You were on leave. You had no obligation to risk your life for this base or these soldiers. But you did it anyway. She gestured toward the approaching helicopters. That's the QRF from Kandahar, about 30 minutes too late to do any good. By the time they arrived, you'd already broken the enemy's back. The helicopters were closer now too, Black Hawks and a pair of Apache gunships, their rotors beating a rhythm of salvation against the morning sky. Elena could see soldiers preparing landing zones, their movement sufficient despite the exhaustion that showed in every line of their bodies. Ma'am, what's our casualty count? Elena asked, dreading the answer. Preliminary numbers show 4 KIA, 11 wounded. Mitchell's voice was heavy with the weight of command. It could have been much worse. It should have been much worse. Elena felt the familiar weight of survivor's guilt settling on her shoulders. 4 dead soldiers, 4 families that would receive folded flags and condolence letters. But she also knew that without her intervention, that number would have been in the dozens. Elena! Specialist Chun's voice carried across the compound as he jogged toward them, his young face split by an enormous grin. Holy shit, sorry, ma'am, that was incredible. That last shot, the one that took out their commander? Williams swears it was over 1,000 meters. Language, Chen. Rodriguez's voice carried a note of amusement as he approached the group. The squad leader looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past few hours, but his eyes were bright with something that might have been pride. But the kid's right. I've been doing this for 12 years, and I've never seen shooting like that. Elena felt uncomfortable with the praise. I had good equipment and a stable platform. Any qualified sniper could have made those shots. Bullshit, Williams said as he joined the group, his saw still slung across his shoulder. Ma'am, I was spotting for you on that last engagement. The wind was gusting. You were taking fire, and that tower was swaying like a tree in a hurricane. That wasn't just good shooting. That was impossible shooting. The first Black Hawk touched down in a swirl of dust and rotor wash, disgorging a squad of fresh soldiers who immediately began establishing a security perimeter. Elena watched them work, noting their crisp movements and clean equipment. They looked like soldiers who'd never been tested by real combat, and she felt a strange mixture of envy and pity for their innocence. Staff Sergeant Vasquez, Mitchell said, raising her voice over the helicopter noise. I'm recommending you for the Silver Star. Your actions tonight went far beyond the call of duty. Elena started to protest, but Mitchell held up a hand. That's not a request. It's a statement of fact. You'll also be receiving a formal commendation from the base. And I suspect higher headquarters will want to debrief you extensively. The second Black Hawk landed, and Elena could see medics rushing toward it with stretchers carrying the wounded. Marcus immediately moved to assist, his training taking over as he helped coordinate the medical evacuation. Elena watched him work, noting the confidence in his movements, the way the other medics deferred to his expertise despite his relatively junior rank. He's good at this, Rodriguez said, following her gaze. Your brother saved more lives in the past 6 months than most medics see in their entire careers. We're lucky to have him. Elena felt a surge of pride mixed with worry. He's thinking about extending his deployment. I know. We've talked about it. Rodriguez's expression grew serious. Ma'am, I won't lie to you. This sector's getting hotter. What happened tonight was just the beginning. But if Marcus decides to stay, he'll have the best protection we can give him. The Apache gunships circled overhead like mechanical vultures, their sensors scanning the surrounding hills for any remaining enemy activity. Elena could see their door gunners at their weapons, ready to engage any threats that might emerge from the rocky terrain where the insurgents had fled. Elena. Marcus appeared at her elbow, his medical bag now empty and his hands stained with blood. The wounded are stable, and the medevac birds are ready to transport. But there's something else. He led her away from the group, toward a quiet corner near the damaged communications bunker. His expression was serious, older somehow than it had been just hours before. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about requesting a transfer to our unit. Marcus paused, choosing his words carefully. After tonight, after seeing what you did up there, I think you should do it. Elena studied his face, seeing the boy she'd protected overlaid with the man he'd become. Marcus, this isn't a game. What happened tonight? What happened tonight proved that we need you here, he interrupted. Not just me, but all of us. Rodriguez, Chun, Williams, they're good soldiers, but they're not you. They can't do what you did up there. The sound of the departing helicopters filled the silence between them as Elena considered his words. She thought about her comfortable assignment back at Bragg, the routine training exercises and administrative duties that filled her days. Then she looked around at Firebase Echo scarred, battered, but still standing, and at the soldiers who'd fought so hard to defend it. There's something else, Marcus continued. Rodriguez told me that intelligence thinks this was a probing attack. The real assault might come later, when they think we're weakened and demoralized. Elena felt a cold certainty settle in her stomach. They'll be back. Yeah, and when they come, we'll need every advantage we can get. Marcus reached out and took her hand. I know it's selfish, but I want my big sister watching my back. Elena looked toward the eastern hills, where the insurgents had fled, imagining them regrouping, planning their next attack. She thought about the 4 soldiers who'd died tonight, the 11 who'd been wounded. The dozens more who'd only survived because she'd been in the right place at the right time. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll put in for the transfer." Marcus's face lit up with relief and gratitude. "Really?" "Really. But I have conditions." Elena's voice took on the tone she'd used when they were children, and she was laying down the law. "You follow orders, you stay safe, and you don't do anything stupid to try to impress me." "Deal," Marcus said, grinning. "Though I should warn you, Rodriguez is already planning to put you in charge of sniper training for the whole firebase." Elena laughed despite herself. "Of course he is." As the sun climbed higher over the Afghan mountains, casting long shadows across the battle-scarred compound, Elena felt a strange sense of homecoming. This wasn't the reunion she'd planned, and Firebase Echo certainly wasn't the peaceful family visit she'd envisioned. But standing here with her brother, surrounded by soldiers who'd proven themselves in the crucible of combat, she realized that sometimes family wasn't just about blood. It was about the people you'd fight beside, the ones you'd die for, the ones who'd watch your back when the world went to hell. The war wasn't over. The insurgents would regroup, plan new attacks, test the defenses again. But when they came, they'd find Firebase Echo ready for them, defended by soldiers who'd learned that sometimes the difference between victory and defeat came down to one person willing to climb a damaged tower and make impossible shots in the dark. Elena Vasquez had come to Afghanistan to visit her little brother. She was staying to protect her family, all of them died as the last of the medevac helicopters disappeared into the morning sky. Elena shouldered her rifle and walked toward the armory to requisition more ammunition. There was work to do, and she had a feeling she was going to need every round she could get. The tide had turned at Firebase Echo, but the war was far from over.